Welcome back to The Backmarkers, the F1 podcast for new fans by new fans. My name is Mike Hurley, and I am joined by Austin Evans. Hi, Austin.
Hello, hello. And it's almost like we have a special guest today.
We do.
The one and only Sarah Dici. How's it going, Sarah?
It's going good. Oh my gosh, it's an honor. And I'm glad that this podcast is, for new F1 fans. So I do kind of feel like I have a little bit of imposter syndrome since I'm new. But hey, that's the point, right?
Look, all three of us were just in various stages of Drive to Survive. So Austin told me, I'd watched the first season, told me to watch it. I watched the second season, and I tell everyone to watch it. And Sarah, this is your first season, right?
Correct. Watching, the races live, but I went through all of the seasons of Drive to Survive in probably a month. And It was in between, collabing with Austin Evans in California and him basically talking about it a ton. And I'm like, I've heard this from so many people. Maybe I should just try it. And then I went for it and I got so addicted. It's so funny coming into it with the already existing fans. They're so passionate and they're a little bit territorial. So it's been fun kind of, tweeting and people being excited, but also people being like, if you just watch Drive to Survive, you don't understand,
So this is kind of why we made this show. So as I was getting more and more involved, all of the podcasts that I was listening to, they were like, oh, but what about the 1999 result? And it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? Like, and I was just finding like there was too much like necessary knowledge to be able to follow, and that's not what we're about, right? Like we want to be basically here for the fans that have watched Drive to Survive and then want a podcast to listen to, where we kind of just break it down as simple as like we're not bringing a bunch of knowledge to it. We try not to be too like particular about all the things. So how many races have you watched?
This is my third.
Okay.
Ooh.
So Miami, Spanish Grand Prix, and now Monaco. So it's been fun. And every time, since I'm a big Twitterer, again, I'm getting everyone's like thoughts before the race. And what I've discovered and what makes F1 so fun is like no one's ever right.
Yes. Oh my God, that's it. Yeah.
Because everyone on the last weekend, they're like, oh, the Spanish Grand Prix is always so boring. And it was my second race, but the first time that I watched everything, like qualifying and the race, and I was really into it. And I was like, this race is so fun. Mm-hmm. Like it was so exciting. There were so many things happening. So I think that's what I'm learning right off the bat is like, no matter what hot takes you have, it's like, it will go wrong in some way. And that's why I think it's exciting.
I've been driving Austin crazy with this, I think, over the last weeks. I believe there is no such thing as a boring race. Like, I don't think it exists because I always enjoy it, no matter what happens. I will say, now we were saying...
I mean, today, though.
I know. We were saying last week, it's probably going to be pretty quiet. It's Monaco. It was madness. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but I still want to kind of touch on a few things with you first. Do you have any favorites? Are there any teams, drivers you're rooting for?
Yes. So I've been called basic for this. Because I'm gonna let y'all guess who my favorite driver is.
Okay, if it's a Drive to Survive,
Twitter, I think I know.
Yeah, I probably would have guessed Daniel Ricciardo, but this is a very normal Drive to Survive like graduation.
Exactly. So I recognize that, but that doesn't stop me from not only liking him but also the McLaren team. Like I feel like Lando is so sick.
Love Lando.
I feel like he's kind of and again, I don't want to fall into what Drive to Survive wants me to think about Max, because I think they want you to think that he's like not the bad guy, but he's just edgy. I've watched the YouTube videos. He seems very nice, but I think Lando is almost just like a more fun version of Max.
Yes, I love Lando.
But yeah. So just the whole McLaren team, I'm a big fan of, and it's like orange, it's peachy, so there's a lot of different things.
It's got to be on brand. The most important thing.
Exactly. On brand. Daniel Ricciardo, Lando, sign me up.
I'm going to see if I can.
And the Zach Brown guy seems
Zach
cool.
seems great. Austin, I'm going to try and trick Austin. Austin, do you have a favorite driver yet?
I mean, my boy Checo, of course.
Oh, you do now. Your best friend.
Unofficially. No. Again, I'm not a biased individual who would try to shove my love of a particular team down everyone's podcast feed every week. I would never do something like that. But if I were to be rooting for anyone, it might be the person who won today's race.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad he did.
So
I felt bad for him last race.
He got screwed last week. It was...
Yeah.
And like I loved the end of the last week's Grand Prix where he's like, we're going to have a chat. He was like,
He was
we're
so
talking
chill.
later on. I'm happy for Max, but we're having a conversation. He was not a happy boy. All right, we need to break down some of what happened here in Monaco today, but we got to start with the recap of the race. Austin, what happened?
So P1 is none other than our good friend of the show, asterisk, potentially maybe.
Your buddy.
My best friend, Sergio Perez. P2 was Carlos Sainz. P3 was Max. That was the podium. And then our very sad, not friend of the show, Charles Leclerc, P4. Which
I feel so bad for him.
Horrible.
Oh,
So
boy,
just so super sad. This should have been Charles' week, right? Like it had to have been, and snatched from him again. So Sarah,
Yeah.
we mentioned it a million times, but last year he qualified first but crashed during qualifying, and they couldn't start his car, and he had to bail out of the whole race. So
I mean, that was in Drive to Survive. Right?
oh, of course it was. Of course it was.
Yeah. I remember that storyline.
yeah, I think they showed it in 2 different episodes in Drive to Survive lessons because it was such a big deal.
Everyone knows we had
Anyway,
2 Monaco Grand Prix that year. Same thing happened twice.
He is super cursed. Going down the rest of the order, we've got George Russell P5, Lando coming in P6, the Spanish wall himself, Fernando Alonso in P7, and then we've got Lewis Hamilton P8, Bottas P9, and Seb coming in a surprise P10. I don't know, that one kind of snuck up on me. I actually didn't even realize until after the race. It's like, oh, he ended up picking up a point. Although I think that's because of Ocon's penalty, which kind of pushed him down the order, right?
Yeah.
He shows P12 here on the final standings. So, yeah, it was a race. It was a race. Sarah, I feel like we gotta ask you first, because I have a lot of very strong opinions on this track and this event in general. But as someone who's only watched a handful of races, and this is probably the first time you've seen the delays with rain and stuff. But what did you think about this? And please illuminate me, because I have some, like I said, very strong opinions.
Yeah, I think all of my answers will start with Twitter and then me kind of coming to my own insights, because before, really all I knew of Monaco is just, it's important because it's the flashy, it has a lot of history and just a ton of rich people go there, and it's kind of like the spot. It's a very important race. But it wasn't until this race that I started noticing, the YouTube comments or Twitter. And it's interesting, I guess the hosts, Sky News and stuff kind of egg on these debates of should we even have a Monaco race anymore, since, apparently it's a debate for next year and the coming races. So I found it interesting that a lot of people are like, oh, get rid of the Monaco race. It's amazing how quickly these conversations just I was like, wait, get rid of the Monaco race? I'm like, how would you do that? Isn't there so much history? Doesn't everyone love Monaco race? But the fact that, oh, my kitty is coming in, he has some thoughts. But the fact that people flip on it, they seem like they flip so quickly. Monaco is such an important race. Oh no, we need to get rid of the Monaco race because people can't overtake. So I guess I can understand that, because the last race was so much more exciting, I feel like, with just the passing and stuff happening. But I think with, there being rain, it made it a little bit more exciting. Although the final 20-30 minutes, I was kind of just getting kind of tired.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, the reason people say they don't want Monaco anymore is for the fact that there's basically no chance for overtaking. So they call it
which I understand.
Yeah, they call it a lot of time the procession. Because by and large, the qualifying order tends to be the finishing order to some degree, unless something bananas happens. And I mean, what happened today was just it feels pretty unprecedented. It was just wild.
But as you can tell, that's when strategy comes into play, because the Ferrari people getting Charles. I always want to call him Charles, but everyone's like Charles.
Yeah, Charles.
So,
Charles.
Is it?
It's actually really Charles. It's S-H-A-R-L. Charles.
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 So, pulling him in for a pit stop obviously changed things. So I think it's well, I guess even if there's not overtaking, other strategy does come into play, right? So, I mean, you could make that argument for keeping it in the races.
I don't want Monaco to go away, because I just love watching the cars drive around that track. I just think it looks beautiful, and I appreciate the history of it. I know Austin has a spicy...
Seems like Austin has something to say.
I'm itching here. Okay, look, I love Monaco.
You clearly don't, though, right? You clearly don't. If you have to say that, you clearly don't. The way because I love Monaco, but means you don't love it.
My retirement plan is I'm gonna live in Monaco, and it's gonna be
great.
That's it. That's the move,
big
right?
plans cool. over there.
I like to be ambitious. Ask me in 30 years how it's going. But these cars are too big for that track. Now, before, I think it was actually earlier this weekend, they had some of the original like 50s cars out on track. And seeing those cars slipping and sliding around was amazing, right? I mean, you see even like the older school stuff, like there's that incredibly famous sort of Senna onboard of him just ripping the car around and it was like 90 or 91 or whatever. When the cars were smaller, it was still very difficult, but at least there could be some racing. The fact that we saw one of the most insane, stupid, crazy, rain delayed, like just chaos-filled races, and even then, it was like only interesting because of all the craziness. Look, I love Monaco. If these cars, the next generation of cars, shrinks down, like all of what we've been saying this season so far about how much better these cars are for passing and for making the racing good, that doesn't apply at Monaco. It is straight impossible. We saw 5, 6, 7 different kinds of examples of how it was next to impossible for him to do anything. The fact that we saw Pierre make a couple of passes on track, like that was crazy.
Yep.
And it was only because he's like 4 or 5 seconds a lap faster than someone else, right? Like this is not a race. This is a qualifying and a roll the dice and hope that something happens. I love the history. I respect the history. But man, if it falls off the calendar next year, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Maybe it might make my future apartment a little cheaper, actually. So, I can vote for that. Actually,
right now.
So you would still want to live there without F1 coming through?
I think it's just a really cool spot. I grew up seeing it in so many movies.
All the drivers live there too, Sarah. I don't know if you've caught onto this, but they all moved there eventually.
Maybe because, there's no tax in Monaco.
Yeah, this is right.
Exactly. Yeah. My impression of Monaco is through Yoon Olsen's vlogs. Do you guys know who he is?
I don't know.
No.
He's like a former professional skier, but he's like a big YouTube vlogger. So he lived in Monaco for like 15 years or something. And he was always going to these F1 races. And as I would watch his vlogs, I'm like, why is this such a big deal? What's going on? So it's interesting to now have all these like, previous things that have referenced F1 and Monaco to all be like, oh, now I understand why it's such a big deal. But he lived there and it looked fabulous.
Yeah, it looks nice.
No taxes.
Yeah. Big casinos.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was always the thing when I was growing up,
fair.
because like with the Grand Prix and stuff, it was always like, oh, there's no taxes, but a Coke costs like $4, right? It's just like, okay. Like this was like a thing that I was told as a kid. It's like, okay, great. So rain, there was lots of rain, and the start was really chaotic. Like it seemed like and again, it was going backwards and forwards from commentary online, that kind of stuff. It seemed like race control were really just kind of making it up as they were going along. It felt bad today.
The announcers were hilarious.
They were so mad. Martin Brundle was so upset today. He was so mad.
Yes. He was like, let him race.
That's what it's about. This isn't the junior league. That was my favorite one. I was like, oh, jeez. He's so upset.
Well, this thing is like, so us Americans wake up very early especially if you're on the West Coast. But regardless, these races are really early. Every time there's like a big rain delay like this, obviously, the safety is important. But when you see all the people in the stands getting soaked and you see the millions of people around the world literally wasting hours of their life waiting, I do think that the new race control seems like they're maybe a little too cautious. Mind you, once they actually like tried to do that sort of initial procession lap to kind of see how it went, the rain was totally crazy at that point. But I think there was very clearly a window for the teams to go out and try to at least get a couple of laps in. Mind you, I don't think it would have necessarily made a huge difference, but I saw a screenshot on Twitter. Someone was looking at like the tire mix. If people would have gone out at the moment the race was supposed to begin, it would have been absolutely ridiculous. I think it would have been really entertaining, but the whole like, you know what? I'm gonna calm down for a second. I'm gonna calm down, just like all the drivers had to calm down when they got delayed. But I think a lot of the decisions have been a little bit overly safe, a little bit questionable, especially considering that these are literally 20 of the greatest drivers on the planet and cars. Like they know what they're doing. And if they crash, they crash. Like that's kind of part of why everyone watches, especially a race like this, because what else are you waiting for?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of seemed like, I was kind of following along what Martin Brundle was saying, really, of like, if they would have gone out when they were supposed to go out, there would have been a 15-minute window, then they would have come in. They maybe would have red flagged the race. But at that point, at least they got a full start. For me, what was frustrating today is we never actually saw a start. Like that, I find that annoying. I like to see, I like to see a full standing start. It is a massive point of the race, right? Like it starts to set all the beginning of the race. Really, it made qualifying way too important for this race, but ultimately it didn't end up helping out Charles anyway. But I think it was a shame that we didn't get to see that today. And yeah, it seemed like it was odd.
it just like the race just oozed into start. Like it just
Yes.
like, we're racing. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. The race has begun. It was such a weird start. And honestly, even at the end, right? It's so rare to have a race end on time.
I've never
not
seen
on
that.
actual laps.
I've never seen that.
It's really rare. And it's like, oh, and this one more lap. Oh, okay, we'll do one more lap. Like it I could say something. I'm not going to say something about another sport that maybe has a nebulous sort of idea about when the game should end, but just the whole weekend and the whole race today was so strange.
Very odd.
Was there actually, before we go super deep in the race, should we talk a little bit about qualifying? Because that ultimately was super interesting, and I think a little ironic because when it comes to qualifying, Charles obviously did a great job, pulled P1, had pole, and he was pulling a crazy lap, right? Like, not only did he get that first lap in, which was clearly above everyone else, but on the next lap, he almost finished before the red flag, he was another like 2 or 3 tenths up. Like, he was ridiculously fast. But the person who crashed, which was Checo, and then ultimately Carlos kind of ran into him, was the one who was the winner of the race. It's just kind of a little ironic that, he kind of screwed up and was rewarded for it, whereas, someone like Charles consistently does a great job, but gets sort of penalized and knocked out and gets unlucky. Just, I thought, like a little bit of irony that I'm sure he's completely forgotten about that. Now he's drinking his champagne and hanging out on a podium. But yeah, that was a little unfair, I suppose.
Yeah.
Racing's unfair, but I was definitely struck by that.
There's a lot of luck in this sport. That's what I struggled with early on. I was like, wait, this is so dependent not only on the team, the car, but also how much money you have, how much money your dad has. Was your dad a race car driver? There's so many. But I've just accepted that because I'm like, okay, I guess if everyone's loaded, if everyone has a race driver in their family, I guess that does. They're all on an even playing field. It's just like elevated, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like there is an element of leveling out, right? Because even I agree there is an element of luck, but throughout the season, the luck hits different people at different times, right? Like, it's like, oh, so unlucky for such and such today because their engine failed. But then in 2 weeks' time, their main opponent's engine is going to fail and they're going to get it back. Like, there is an element of, like, I have equated it before to fortune. It's more fortune than luck, right? Like, even if something happens, you have to be in the right place at the right time, reacting in just the right way to take advantage of it, right? So it's like you can.
And there's so many things that could go wrong and go right. It kind of evens out.
Like, we're obviously going to talk about this a bit more, but like to make that point of like, Charles was having a great race, but then Ferrari messed up. They messed up calling him into the pits, tried to abort it at the wrong time. That helmet cam, by the way, did you see the helmet cam which tied up and he's like shaking his hands going into the pits? Like they were not paying attention to Red Bull enough to see the times that they were doing, and it completely destroyed his race. It was questionable. It's always questionable to double stack. So double stacking when you pit one and then pit one straight after, because that second guy's waiting, and it also errors. There's been times in the past, right, where they have the wrong tires, right? That was the thing for George when he filled in for Lewis during the COVID time. So that you're introducing so much risk at that point from strategy and time, and they messed up, and that was just such a ridiculous call, right? To say like get in the pits. Oh no, wait, we changed our mind. It's like this is like amateur, right? Is how that sounds at that point. And oh man, I feel for him so much because and it was kind of funny you saying about that lap because he was doing 1:11, I think was his lap in qualifying. I made a note of it. The first laps today, when they were outside of the safety car, they were doing it in 1 minute 43 seconds, I think. So it was a 30-second difference because of the rain. I just thought that was kind of funny.
I feel like that's the kind of time I do if I was driving an F1 car.
Yeah, you think?
I'd be going 43 in that car. I think so.
4.5 hours.
Maybe, maybe like Tom Cruise doing that lap.
Oh man, yeah, no, but hey, can we just give a shout out to Charles? At least he finally finished a Monaco Grand Prix. Yep. Like it's been because he's never finished one, and it's his home race. I mean, P4 is better than your car in the garage in 3 pieces. I mean, that's maybe
shout out to Haas.
Oh boy, yeah.
Oh, yo.
I was really worried about Mick Schumacher. It scared me a lot. Like when they went to that,
especially when they didn't show it immediately.
Because they don't know what situation he's in, right? So they don't. They learned that the hard way with Romain Grosjean, which is what this reminded me of. Like when they went to that scene and there was just half of a Haas. Oh my god, I was worried.
Yeah. that point of Drive to Survive was like, I was like, this is the best thing I've ever watched in my life. Yeah. When he, like, the epic music and he just like rose from the flames, I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I was like,
live.
The drama.
It was so upsetting live.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
In the background, he slides, a huge fireball, they cut away, and then and like everyone's just like trying to talk about other things for like 10 minutes until they finally can show the footage. In Drive to Survive, you get like this beautiful like 35-minute montage of him like sliding into the wall and another camera angle. Yeah. So actually, and I would double check this, but I'm pretty sure it's correct. I think this is the second time Mick has not only crashed his car, but split it in half this season.
Oh my gosh.
The Saudi Arabian qualifying. So the first qualifying of the year, he span out, very similar to how he span out today, where the car just seemed to jerk to the right. He span around, hit the car split in half. I don't know what it is about these cars. This seems very rare to me. I mean, my understanding, Austin, you correct me if I'm wrong, is they are designed to break away.
Yes.
If necessary.
After that Grosjean crash, all the teams, they basically had to put some extra time and thought into for certain impacts to make sure that the cars separate in a good way, because every crash is all about just sort of like help to protect the driver from experiencing crazy G-forces in one way or another. So that's why sometimes you see crashes that the car, like I remember Lando last year at Spa, he spun, it looked crazy, but he was spinning around, but ultimately the impact wasn't really heavy. So a lot of times that's why like the barriers are so like plushy, for lack of a better term, and the cars are designed to kind of crumple and break away and whatnot. But maybe Haas have gotten a little excited. But to be fair, Mick walked away from both, I believe. So it's doing its job.
Yeah, definitely absorbed the impact, right? But yeah, I cannot believe that looked so gross, right? Like that was kind of the only word I could have to describe it. I can't believe he was just fine. Like he just got up and walked out. Like it was a horrible looking crash for Mick today.
After you knew he was okay, I was kind of laughing though with the guys pulling the back two tires off. It looked like a wheelbarrow. They were just like scooting with like an entire back half of a car. I'm like, this is so funny.
I was expecting more crashes today though, honestly. Like, especially after in the first formation lap when two cars went into the back, I was like, this is going to be a disaster. I couldn't believe that was really all that ended up. And the other DNFs, Alex Albon was out with some mechanical failure. I don't know what happened to Magnussen. I don't know when he went out. I had no idea.
They didn't show it.
Because they went to Magnussen.
I think they said something about water pressure or something.
Because I was like, hang on a minute. Like, because we see the Haas, didn't know who it was, and they shot to Kevin Magnussen. I was like, how did he get out already? What's happening? He's out with his helmet off. Jump out of the car. It's all so funny because it was kind of unfortunate, but when they go to him, Magnussen's like, he's like really upset. And it's like, Mick is like in pieces over here, man. Give him a break.
Oh, man, it's wild. But so I guess there's a lot to go through. And like, I almost feel like maybe it's me who woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm slightly sleepy right now. But so we had the initial aborted start where they did the formation laps. Yep. Then it was another, 45 minutes or so before the race actually got underway. It was interesting to see because, especially when you go to the very, very beginning, no one was really expecting rain today, or maybe just a little sprinkle or something. Yeah. And we had a lot. It was really rare for me to see just how insane the pit wall got. You know, the stories about like the team principal of Williams, like helping to like push tires up and down. Monaco's such a tight pit lane. Just watching that whole experience was really, really crazy. Yeah. And the fact that we did all that, and I mean, man, you gotta imagine that those sort of mechanics and stuff are just gonna pass out tonight. Like, what a ridiculous, ridiculous day. You just the Ferrari guys being all stressed about like the double stack and everything like that. Like, you know, everyone is
the stress though. Are you kidding me? Let them stress out about that. They're Ferrari.
That's true. That they need to be stressed out about. There's gonna be a lot of meetings about that one this evening. I'll tell you that. That was a big mess up there. But yeah, like as well, because when they red flagged, right? Similarly, now they're all over the place. They're not sitting outside of their garages anymore. So there are people running backwards and forwards with new tires and stuff like that. The red flag was obviously helpful to Lewis. Lewis had some damage from Esteban Ocon. But that didn't really help him because it was basically, I don't know if like Lewis Hamilton said something bad about Alpine over the weekend or what, but they did not like him this weekend, right? Ocon smashing into him and then Alonso will not let him by. I got to say, I mean, Alonso annoyed me today. Alonso, no, because it wasn't just Lewis, right? He bunched up that whole pack there could have been more going on there. And I think that leaving like a 30, 40 second gap to Norris that wasn't fun racing for me.
Myke, I think you're missing the point of it's racing. The whole point is to beat everyone else. You don't have to as long as you're not getting penalized, you can do whatever you want.
Boring.
Alonso could have been just like this the whole time.
But I would have preferred to see that than him driving slow. No, seriously, like I wanted to see more battle between them, right? And it was just, I don't know, it took it out for me a little bit.
Well, again, just back to my initial point of Monaco is a bad track and shouldn't be on the calendar anymore.
Yeah, sure. No, you're right.
Well, from a newcomer who's, binged all of the Drive to Survive, and obviously, Mercedes was on top for so long and they seemed like they could never be beat. And then coming into here and just seeing Lewis Hamilton, in the mid-range this entire time is like shocking for me. And so I have it because I came in kind of mid-season. Like, can you guys educate me on what's going on, I guess, with the Mercedes car, or what has happened? What has changed this season?
Myke,
with Mercedes?
I feel like
you're killing me.
Well suited.
I'm absolute diehard ride or die Mercedes fan.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So
Please
Austin
educate
is
me.
trying to physically hurt me and having to tell this story. So obviously this year they brought in all new cars, right? So they had new regulations, new designs for the cars. It was effectively wiping the slate clean, make a new car. And for the first few races especially, Mercedes were really struggling on multiple fronts. It seemed like they didn't have enough power in the engine, and also with the aerodynamics was making the car bounce up and down. It's a phrase you would have heard a lot called porpoising. It basically was like with the way that the aerodynamics were hitting the car, as the car would go fast down a straight, it would start to bounce the car and it would get worse and worse. And the drivers are just like bouncing down. And it's like they had to ride the car higher so it wouldn't damage the underside of the car. That also makes the car slower. So they have been struggling for the entire season with various issues. And where other teams have been able to make tweaks and tunes to their car to get them more performance every week, Mercedes has still been trying to just fix their issues. Last week, Mercedes seemed to have done some relatively decent upgrades that kind of made them competitive again. That seems to have carried over this week. They were doing much better, but they're still far off from Red Bull and Ferrari in what they're able to actually achieve. So basically, they have spent the last 5-6 races just fighting for position. Now, what it seems like from my perspective is this is very odd ground for Lewis to be in. He has had an excellent car under him for years and years and years, and he is not feeling confident in the car, and I think it's shaking his confidence, and he's not driving right. George came from Williams, where he
Which
was fighting.
janky to begin
exactly.
with.
He
Yeah.
was fighting a bad car, and I think that has set him up to deal with it a little better. Plus, I think George has a little bit more confidence in the car because he has less to lose. So
Exactly.
he's
Yeah, that's what I
willing
was
to
gonna
push
say. Like
it.
Lewis has everything to
Exactly.
lose.
So
And you could hear it, and that's what I'm kind of shocked when you hear Lewis Hamilton over the radio, kind of just his attitude. I'm like, oh man, this guy seems defeated. This doesn't seem like the same guy that I follow on Instagram who's always posting like the dopest fits before the race and like being super positive. It's weird because like the moment he gets in the car, it almost seems like he just seems defeated, especially last weekend when he wanted to give up.
Yeah.
And his own team had to be like, let's keep on. And he, made up for so many positions. It's interesting.
yeah, a way I look at that with Lewis, because he gets a lot of criticism for stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's a human being, and he tries to stay positive, but he gets upset, he gets angry like anybody else, and we just happen to hear it, And the way, and then like what I like, I think another thing that I enjoy about Lewis today is like before the race when he gets on the radio, he's like, "All right, everyone, just calm down." It's like stuff like I like it. He's showing his experience in that moment. But yeah, last week I felt for him because it was rough. Like he had a rough start. But again, it's like he can learn from that, right? Like, okay, but you ended up, you're still Lewis Hamilton, right? Like you can do this. Like so I don't know where we're going to be with Mercedes. I still reckon, looking at where they are right now, they're probably going to be a pretty strong third place, which is referred to as best of the rest, which you would have heard of Drive to Survive. And then they can try and push into next year. But it is interesting that George is beating Lewis right? Like it's very interesting. Like there is definitely a gap between them. I don't know what that's going to say for the future for the two of them.
Yeah.
And just to kind of expand on that a little bit, one of the other things that Mercedes have been fighting on their car is, like Mike said, the porpoising. But what they were having at Monaco seemed like it was maybe a little bit of a different issue because so traditionally what porpoising is, it's like sort of the heavy G loads and really more so the actual sort of downforce is being pulled. So essentially compared to the old cars where they would make most of the downforce on the top of the car pushing it down, these cars basically use the underside, so known as what's ground effect, basically to suck the car down from the bottom. And so once that sort of suction sort of gets dropped, the car kind of like detaches and sucks, detaches to sucks, and it kind of, that's why it's bouncing so much. But that's generally a thing that happens on higher speed circuits, which is, to be fair, almost everywhere that's not Monaco. Monaco is pretty slow. And so what it seems like is Monaco is a very old track. It is, a bunch of public, like true public real street circuits, and it's super bumpy. And so in a lot of ways, the fact that Mercedes were dealing with a similar issue here makes it seem like while, yes, they have to kind of deal with that porpoising and the actual like aerodynamic side of things, they also don't really seem like they have great control of the suspension and how soft to run it and everything. Like the car is really nervous. You can see it just kind of bouncing around. And even in slower speed tracks like this, it to me really makes it seem like Mercedes have a bigger issue than just, they need to, add a couple of aero bits here or there. They have almost like a more fundamental suspension issue where they can't really kind of control those heavy tires and wheels. That's what kind of it seems to me. And the fact that George and Lewis definitely had pace in the race, but it still feels like there's like some deeper gremlins with that Mercedes that are going to be very difficult to kind of work out.
To be fair, though, a track like Monaco always has cars that can't drive well around it every year because it is so different. Every year, like there will be, it can throw up an odd result where like such and such car, they're not good around Monaco.
Which I feel like is a good reason to keep it.
I agree with you.
Fight me, Austin.
Okay, here's the thing. You just watched one of the most interesting Monaco Grand Prix in a very, very long time. And still, the only part that was interesting was it rained at an incredibly unopportune time. That last bit of the race when that thing happens, that's every Monaco Grand Prix.
To be fair, in
time.
Austin's defense, the part that you said you found sleepy, that would have been the entire 2 hours. By and large.
I guess a part of me, though, is like, if it makes it more interesting, though, for at least, maybe the Drivers' Cup in terms of like random people getting more points, I don't know. I feel like it might be worth sacrificing a boring race, but because it's like, everyone had Charles. I can't say his name seriously. Charles.
I like you putting the British on it, though. That was good. That's the way to do it.
Charles. Everyone had him, and then it's like Checo, woo, So, but yeah, and that really came down to strategy, not even the rain. So, it would be awesome one day to be able to be in Monaco and like see a Monaco race. You
and everyone else. That's why it's so hard.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not upset. Like, if Monaco sticks around, it sticks around, and if there's one weird, boring race a year, that's fine. Like, it is different. I just am not thrilled with the way the racing is. Like, this is a sport that's all about overtakes and racing. And it's really like, who can, like, honestly, Monaco qualifying is way more interesting than the race for me. Like, absolutely without a doubt. Because that's where the race is really decided. And unless you get something crazy like today, you generally don't see anything actually happen on track besides some shenanigans like Alonso being, super wide or whatever. Or Danny Rick a couple years ago when he lost, 100 horsepower or whatever from his ERS. He was still able to win the race. Like,
which was awesome.
Was cool. Yeah. But
I feel like Drive to Survive did a terrible job explaining qualifying. Because still up to the last season, I was kind of like, so they just like go around for one lap and that's their qualifying. That seems kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's
but
what they show.
I didn't understand. Yeah, I didn't understand until I actually watched the races that they knock off 5 at a time, that there's like actually rounds of qualifying. So that's been interesting for me. And I'm like, this is as exciting sometimes as the race,
Yeah, qualifying I have found to be a thing that's really hard to explain to new fans. Like the fact that there's 3 rounds and then the 5 go, like it's quite a complicated system. You haven't seen a sprint qualifying yet, have you? In the races that you've seen?
No. Did they do it in Miami?
I don't think so.
They did it.
No. Okay, I remember
Imola.
someone mentioning it, but I don't think I've actually seen
It's
it.
where they basically add a mini race in the middle. So they still have qualifying as you know it. That sets an order for a 20-lap race usually. And then that
It's a
20-lap
quarter
race
distance
sets
or
the
something.
order for the final race. It's fun. I like it. It
Interesting.
adds
Yeah.
more to the weekend.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. But they only do that, I believe, they did it for the first time last year. I think they're doing it for 3 or 4 races
It's
this
3
year.
races this year. They wanted to do 6,
3, yeah.
but they ended up doing 3. This is part of like the F1 company trying to put more in, right? More to watch is what they want, which make it more exciting. They add points in there too, Sarah, so you get extra points for the drivers for those
That's cool.
races too. It's a smaller
Was
amount,
that did that start just this year?
they started doing it last year again,
Okay.
and then they refined it.
So
this year.
maybe yeah, they referenced it
Yep.
on Drive to Survive.
Possibly.
That's
I
one of
don't
the things-
know.
Yeah, so I actually I think out of all the things that Formula One does right and wrong, I think actually the existing qualifying format is really interesting, right? Like having the 5 people drop off, there's less traffic. Like I actually think
I
I
do
mean,
too, yeah.
there's a reason why this format has basically been intact since like the mid 2000s, generally speaking. Because in the past, there have been a lot of different formats. You know, there used to be kind of like, as you said, everyone gets like an hour or whatever to just run around and whoever gets the fastest times. For a little while there, it was basically got one shot, so everyone out. You get a turn, you do your lap, whatever that lap is what it is. But this existing format, I think, has been pretty good, unless you're Checo and you wipe out and you ruin everyone else's race and then you win. Not that that would ever be unfair or anything, like some people were saying.
And then there's also reverse, right? Reverse order. Is that right? Like that I'm not.
Reverse grid is never going to happen.
Yeah.
So basically the idea, especially this is more so when Mercedes just won everything and it was really boring to watch Formula One for a while, and then
It was
Red Bull
awesome.
before that.
It was awesome to watch.
The good old days, as Mike will refer to them
Yeah,
as.
I might be calling them that for the next few years. I'm very aware.
But yeah, there was an idea that to make things more interesting, you would just literally flip the grid in some way, but everyone quickly realized that would be very difficult to pull off and super unfair in pretty much every way because people would find ways of gaming it. Can I just say, before we move totally on from this whole thing, the one highlight of the race, and we're going to talk about it again later because I've already got it in the doc, the one highlight of the race that was absolutely my favorite of everything we saw was Pierre slicing through the field. You never see people pass in Monaco, especially Pierre was passing everywhere because he was legitimately like 5 seconds a lap faster.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
That was great.
It's time to box. You going to time me?
All right. Okay, so Mike,
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend not to double stack.
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend to go on mediums. And I'm going to also recommend that as soon as I pull up my timer, ready, and begin.
This episode of The Backmarkers is brought to you by The Racing Line. Look, motorsport calendars, they're messy. Finding out what series is racing, what weekend, when the races begin, it's more challenging than it should be. The Racing Line collects the calendars of over 40 major motorsport series and combines it into one easy-to-use application, covering series from F1 to IndyCar to World Endurance Championship to IMSA, I don't even know what that one is, even including MotoGP and similar for bike fans. The app provides day and weekly views so you can get an easy overview of what's happening today and plan your motorsport viewing weeks ahead. Plus, you can get customized notifications. You just set them what you want before each event. So like maybe you want to be alerted a minute before or an hour or a day or 5 days, whenever you want. And the series list is customizable so you can select the series you want to see and hide the ones you don't. This app is awesome. So when I found out about this week, I downloaded it immediately and I've been playing around with it. Like I now have notifications for free practice and qualifying and the races all set up on my phone so I can find out exactly what I need. And I get rid of all of the series that I don't want to see. So I've just got my F1 stuff in there right now and I love it. I can see when all the races are, what time they're going to be in my time zone. It's awesome. If you watch any type of racing, you should get the Racing Line. The Racing Line is on iPhone, iPad, watchOS, and on Android too. Go to theracingline.app. That's theracingline.app. Our thanks to The Racing Line for their support of this show and Relay FM.
And time 1 minute and 32 seconds.
All right.
Good job, Mike.
Okay.
That was a DHL pit stop of the race. I mean, pit stop of the podcast.
What was it? 0132. Did you still get it?
So
I'm making a record
yeah.
of this. We're gonna keep
132.65.
65. All right, we're gonna see if next. I think if they hopefully the race in line. If all back markers listeners go download it, then the race in line will come back, and I can do another time.
Yeah. Also, just side note, I have also been using the app. It actually is really
really
cool.
great.
Like, I immediately turned on notifications for everything. It was like, oh wait, there's a lot of races, but I've now since customized it. It's much better than the old way. I think we both used to keep up with trying to like go, what's the time zone again?
Or using the impossible to understand F1 website.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It was like, oh, 4 o'clock is start time in the morning. Ah.
I'm literally on the website right now looking at how expensive the Austin tickets are since I live in Texas. And all of the general admission is sold out. And that means there's only club tickets left. And I'm like, $4,400. I'm like, that seems like a lot of money. Should I do it?
Seems like it is a lot of money.
Should I do it?
I can't confirm. A lot of money.
That's yeah. There's extra 0 on that ticket, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I will say, Sarah, I have done the Austin Grand Prix once before.
Okay.
It's cool. It's a fun track. It is top 2 worst sporting events I've ever been to as far as traffic. It is hours and hours in and out of the track because it's not too far from Austin, but there's like, I don't know, a couple of farm roads and there's like 400,000 people. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. I think that's how many people went last time.
So it's like stressful.
Like like the roads are like, there's probably traffic until like 2 a.m. or whatever. Like I swapped that in line to get back to just on a bus to go to the parking lot. I stood in line for 2.5 hours, and that bus only took me like 2 miles down the road or whatever. Then I had to go find my car, and
spending almost $5,000 on a ticket for that. That's like
too much.
If you spend $5,000, they'll probably throw a helicopter in, and you'll be fine. I hope so. That being said, though, it is a really cool venue. It's great to be able to walk around. And if you've never been to a race in person, so it's not like, obviously, whatever the start time is for the race, 2 o'clock or whatever. But there's stuff going on all morning. There's like junior categories. There's like, old school Formula 1 cars out on the track and whatnot. Like, you can basically show up as early as you want as soon as the gates open. And there's stuff to do all day long. It's just trying to like get in, especially get out, is an absolute nightmare. But
Vegas might be the call,
that's good to know.
Vegas next year is probably the call because it's happening on the street. So like you just go back to your hotel afterwards, right? Like for ease, there's probably not going to be any easier track than that one.
But about to say, have you checked those hotel prices recently?
Oh, really? They're bumping them up that weekend? Okay, someone's been checking.
There are a solid, so like during CES, which is probably the closest analogy, a lot of times some of the nicer hotels will hit the $700, $800, $900, maybe $1,000 range. There's probably about twice as many people going to the race as something like CES. And so, also a lot of those hotels have views of the tracks that are also like, you don't need to buy a ticket. You can just watch from your room. So Formula 1's great. The fact that it's so much more open and people are watching it is awesome. But when it comes to especially some tracks that don't have great sort of infrastructure, you got to be patient. And I'm not super patient.
So what you're saying is just wait until a brand will pay for me to go.
Or we all chip in. Just hear me out. We all chip in on a helicopter together. Which is one night in and out. How bad could it be? Casey does it all the time.
How bad could it be?
We can reach out to Chris from Becky and Chris and get his helicopter because he just has a helicopter. So maybe we can ask him.
We figured it out live on the show that we'll all be at the Austin race, helicoptering in and out.
Thank you,
Sounds
Chris.
great.
I'm signing you up without your consent.
These YouTubers.
There's bought us all tickets at $4,000 each, so we're all we're gold. We're gold.
All right, so Sarah, when we get into this part of the show, we have a few categories to pick some favorites and least favorites of the race. So first up is our favorite back marker of the race. Now, we have played fast and loose with this because sometimes there aren't any back markers, right? Like the back markers are the people who get lapped by the people in the front, right? I think basically everyone at some point in today's race, except the top 6 were back markers at one point. It was kind of complicated to tell. So really what we tend to do is just pick someone from like outside the points. That's mostly how we've been doing it. I want to start off this time. So we'll give you a few minutes to think of yours. Zhou Guanyu, I think Zhou had a great race. Zhou Guanyu, the reason I'm picking him though, not only did I love watching him like fights for position where he can, but there are a couple of times in this race where he saved himself from almost catastrophe, and like to be able to do that around his first time in an F1 car around Monaco, pretty impressive. Right, like I was very impressed with his race today. That could not have been easy. I always go back thinking about Nikita Mazepin from last year. Do you remember when they were on the radio to him and he was just freaking out? Like he just was very upset about being around Monaco. Oh my God. Leave me alone. This is Monaco. He was very upset. And so, Jorgen Yu was in a similar boat today, right? It's his first time around. I bet it is a very intimidating track to drive around. And I think for him he pulled in, decent, He finished at the back of the pack today, but I think he had, by all intents and purposes, a good race. And so I wanted to just shout him out.
I'll give him a shout out as well. I don't know if he would be, well, I'll tell you, he's not my back marker of the race, but I think he did a really good job. I already alluded to this earlier. My back marker, and again, we're playing fast and loose with that.
We make the rules. There are rules. We make them. It's fine.
We make them and then we immediately break them. So Pierre, just for some context around his weekend, started, I believe, P17, mostly due to the fact that he actually didn't get to finish his last lap. So everyone else pretty much was able to go out, and he was like, I don't know, a quarter of a second away from hitting the line to be able to do it. So massively disadvantaged when it came to qualifying, especially sort of sad for him because he had really good pace. Like he was P5, P6 through like a lot of the practice sessions and whatnot. So clearly he had a great race in him. But when you start P17 in Monaco, all of the rain God can provide still will not save you from starting P17. That being said, though, was super bold on that initial call to go to the intermediate tires. Some of those replays of watching him just sliding around, the fact that he's saved that so many times is impressive. And the fact that we saw a couple of actual overtakes. Again, you don't see that at Monaco, right? Like you see, people, will undercut, they'll go take a pit stop early or late, or you see some crash or some chaos happen. Like that's what you generally see for overtakes. But we're seeing legitimate actual overtakes. Mind you, he had taken that bold decision. He was on the right tire, but it was great to see. Yeah. And he was being smart, but very aggressive. He was taking his passes a few times where he kind of thought about it and backed out, but a couple times you know what? Yep, I'm just here. Hello. Yep. And goodbye. It was great to see. I would give not only Pierre my back marker of the race, I'll give Pierre my racer of the race. That was super, super fun to watch.
Let's just create a new category for us there.
Racer of the race.
Racer of the race. I'm going to workshop that name a little bit. Not great. Real shame for Pierre that he did not actually get any points today because he put in, I agree, some serious work. He put in some serious work today. Sarah, who impressed you today from the lower field?
I don't know if impressed is the right word, but maybe I'll highlight someone who I've just had a fun time. Actually, I've been entertained by him. This is going to seem super random, but Lance Stroll, his just screaming.
Oh my God, it was so good.
Funny to me.
What was going on with him in qualifying?
So yeah, not just on the qualifying, but even today he just had some and it's so hectic. And what's been so funny is I feel like Drive to Survive made you kind of make him out as a bad guy. Like he's only there because dad's, checkbook and all this stuff. So I did not like him from the get, but he's kind of been growing on me as time goes on. But it's just been really funny to just hear how he interacts, over the radio. And he kind of just, lets loose. And I found that really entertaining. So there you go.
I'm with you on that. Massively entertaining. Of just I mean, you got to imagine, you just put yourself in, any of these guys' shoes, right? You're in the car, you're getting absolutely soaked, you can't see. Even in the best scenarios, it's hard to see around Monaco because you're sitting so low in that car, your wheels and tires.
Well, anyone going, 150 miles per hour, I think that would be frustrating as is. And you have people talking to you and
that was funny to me when
raining and slippery.
Last couple of laps or whatever, when Lando was just like, no comms. It's just like, I'm done listening to you now, right? Like this is everything you're telling me is pointless, right? Like we've got 4 minutes of the race left. I'm just gonna keep pushing. Like nothing's gonna change. Just leave me alone. Yeah. I do really love it when they're like no comms. Actually, a similar thing I just remembered I wanted to bring up earlier was Carlos. Carlos made that second place for himself, right? When Ferrari, again, not great strategies, were trying to get him to pit. They wanted to put him on the inters, and he didn't want it. He wanted to wait for the slick tires. He wanted the regular tires. So, Sarah, are you familiar with some of the tire stuff? They talk about wets and inters and slicks, and that. Have you caught up with that so far?
All I know is like soft, medium, and hard.
Yeah.
So when they were talking about inters and stuff, I was kind of like, what's that?
So soft, medium, and hard, they're the regular tires, and they're known as slick tires because they have no treads on them. They are just pure rubber. And then for when the weather is poor, they have two tires. They have wet tires and intermediate tires. Wet tires, they just look like a regular road tire for the tread, just covered in tread. Intermediate, less than. So it's basically, depending on how wet it is. If it's actively raining really bad, you want wet tires. If the track is wet from rain or there's a little bit of rain, you want intermediate tires. And then you go to the slicks. And the tires with treads on them, you go slower on them. And they have a lot of different problems and they are quite unpredictable, but you need them, right? Because otherwise on the slicks, you'll see this at some point, like it will rain, someone's on slicks and it's just like they're on ice. They just can't, it's just, they're all over the place. So the slicks kind of throws me off as a word sometimes because it makes it sound like this is the worst possible tire, but that's actually the tires they typically want.
I need more grip. Get the slicks. Get the slicks.
And so they have the soft, medium, and hard. They're the regular slick tires, and then they have the others. But yeah, so I just thought it was, Sainz put himself in that position today. I actually appreciate it from Ferrari. He told them what they wanted, and they listened to him. It doesn't always happen. Yeah. So.
Well, at the moment, it seemed like, oh, you want to dig your own grave, buddy? Have fun. Yeah. Like
we're all in on Charles today. You do what you want.
Exactly. It's a good point, actually. Yeah. Shout out to Ferrari's complete lack of any good strategy at all. Yeah, because I forgot. Yeah, you're right. He absolutely Carlos was the only one making good decisions there. Charles got absolutely, completely screwed by his pit stop. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess maybe not a good day to be a Ferrari fan. Understatement, potentially.
Oh, it's a terrible day to be a Ferrari fan today. This seemed like a foregone conclusion for them, right? Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah. Like, who is your underperformer of the race?
I'm going full heel. Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, you are.
It just annoyed me. It's just like, it's not really the racing I want to see. Like, it does not bother me to because when I saw Lewis come into Fernando, I'm like, here we go. This is going to be awesome. Like, two of them fighting together is usually such a sight to see. Like, they are, multi-world champions between them, so much experience. And when they fight, it's like two dogs attacking. It's like madness as they go at each other. And basically all he did was slow him down. And it's just like, And obviously he still has to stop Lewis from getting past him, right? So there's still a bit of that, like keeping himself wide, as it were. But I just didn't enjoy the we're going to just slow him down. Like, I honestly, I couldn't really understand why that was Alpine's decision. Like, why do they particularly want to slow down Lewis? Like, I couldn't, especially when that ended up destroying Ocon's race. Like, he could have ended up in the points today. And it seemed like nobody at Alpine worked this out for like a really long time. And then Esteban's like, hang on a minute, what about me? And then he ends up getting kicked out. And they could have, Ocon still could have come in 10th after that penalty today if there wasn't like a 45-second gap established between George and Lando. It just seemed frustrating to me, honestly. I just didn't enjoy that part of the race.
You weren't a big fan of the FAQ, Fernando Alonso's Q.
Yeah.
Shout out Family Movie Night for reminding me of that.
Yeah, that was good.
That was great. I will agree, although I will blame entirely the street circuit of the Principality of Monaco for that one because,
is the track your underperformer of the race?
The track is you know what? Scratch that. I'm just going to throw everything out. Monaco Grand Prix is the underperformer of the race because the track was designed for cars that had 1/10 the power, that were a quarter the size in 1922 or whatever, and everything's gotten too big. Like, the thing is, okay, I'm going to rant. I'm going to rant for a second.
Right, okay.
Cut me off as soon as I go too far, okay? If you've ever seen a modern Formula One car in person, they're massive. They're like 2 meters wide. They're like as long as like a Chevy Suburban, right? They're massive, massive cars. And yeah, they're really lightweight. And yeah, sure, most of that car is nothing. But like the actual physical size of the car is huge. Now, as someone who does not live yet in Monaco, I've never walked around those streets. But I got to imagine just looking at it on TV, so tiny. Like when you see these huge cars going through the chicane and the hairpin, it's just like,
I liked
what?
it
I was
though.
gonna say,
I thought that was fun because I was convinced none of them were going to fit around the track this week. It was exciting for me.
you're just gonna turn too much. You're just gonna like wedge the car. And go, oh, well, end of the race. Sorry.
There was that I don't know the names of the corners. The one where they're going into the tunnel.
Yeah.
And it felt like every single time they were just kicking the back out so they could fit. I just thought that looked great. Because like I was like convinced one of them was going to put it in the wall at some point, which is where Sergio put the car in the wall during qualifying.
He did.
You know?
I don't know. Sarah, do you have an underperformer of the race? Because I have one answer and I can't get away from it anymore.
My guy. I'm waiting for Daniel to step it up.
Oh,
okay,
Sarah.
guys. I'm sorry. I know
I feel bad for you because the I want Daniel to find his place is like a meme at this point. Because Daniel Ricciardo
I've seen on the
cannot
Twitter.
do it. It's a
And
shame.
he's such, he's so like the nice guy. So you want to root for him. He's the goofy, lovable guy. But I'm honestly surprised that it took this long for the McLaren, management people to start being like, touching on, he kind of needs to step it up, because it seems like I don't understand he's just still getting used to the car when it's been a minute. So I want him to win, but everyone's being, I know. And everyone's being so now, he just needs to retire. But then you look at the other drivers on the grid and it's like, I don't think he needs to disappear. He's still a great driver. Put him in a new car,
We've been talking about this, right? So the problem is how good Lando is. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
McLaren's issue right now reminds me of Red Bull's problem before they put Sergio in.
Yep.
So, they had, you would have seen this. They had Daniel Ricciardo, they had Pierre Gasly, they had Alex Albon pairing up with Max, and all of them crumbled because they just couldn't touch Max. And then the pressure of the Red Bull team particularly seems to be really hard on younger drivers. But Sergio has the experience, confident enough in himself, and now has got the pairing to push Red Bull to that next level. If McLaren had a Sergio, they would be fighting against where Mercedes is right now. So McLaren have 59 points in the constructors.
Which you would have thought would be Daniel,
But it for whatever reason, it can't be at the moment. I don't know what it is. And the problem with, I agree with you, right? He is better than a bunch of the people below him, people that we're always railing on every week. But there's also a bunch of young, great drivers. The next Lando is out there, and so
you almost need like a Lando Max pairing.
Yeah. That would be an incredible. Oh my God, the two of them together. That has been rumored.
That'd be insane.
And then McLaren signed him up for like 5 years. I think because of that rumor, they're like, please don't take him.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel for you, and I feel for Danny Rick, and it's exactly like Mike said, right? I think that there's everyone in the entire universe is rooting for Danny Rick, right? But the writing is starting to look like it's starting to hit the wall. I don't think it's a done deal yet, but it's one of those things where once the downward spiral begins and people start really talking and your contract's really uneasy, the last thing that's going to do is help with his confidence, which means that he's not going to be able to perform. Like he's in a very precarious position right now. And as Charles, maybe not the real Charles, in the chat has kind of pointed out that there's a lot of rumors about who else could take that seat, including Pierre, right? Because Pierre has been very vocal that he is ready to move on. Because again, he had a little bit of time at the sister team. He got up to Red Bull, only had maybe a half season, I think, and then he got demoted.
They were like, nah.
That was sad. That was so sad. And Drive to Survive, that was like heartbreaking, that whole thing. Because I remember feeling bad about it at the time. It just didn't feel fair.
And he's gotten like built out. It seems like he's ready to destroy.
Pierre is a fantastic driver. Like his whole time at AlphaTauri, like they have he's really been showing what he's made of, and is pushing that car way harder than it should be able to go. I hadn't thought about them two together at McLaren. That would be a very top tier pairing. My word, that would be cool. I would love that.
That'd be crazy.
I would love to see that. All right, we're getting toward the end here. I think we should save, and we talked last time about doing a tier list.
We'll save that.
I think maybe we should. Yeah, we were like, oh, maybe we'll do like something like that.
We thought this was going to be boring today, so we'll hold it.
So, what was your personal favorite thing of the race? Actually, Sarah, why don't we start with you? Out of the whole race, what was your favorite thing that you saw today?
I would say at the very end when it seemed like there was going to be a fight for first. When both the Red Bull and Ferrari cars started bunching up and you were like, "Oh my gosh, is someone actually gonna, overtake here?" I feel like that added some funness, because it was a solid like 25 minutes of like yawn. So that was cool to see at the end. But then, Checo finishing first was really great from the last race. I felt like at the end, I was like, good for Checo,
Yeah.
I think everyone was like, you deserve that, my man. And also, I'm looking at the comments too. Gustavo had a great point that I should just go to the Mexican Grand Prix. I'm in Texas. I can just fly down there. So maybe I need to turn into a Checo fan, go to the Mexican Grand Prix, sign me up.
It doesn't seem like
Actually,
it's hard to
I've
turn
heard-
into a Checo fan. I love that guy.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
I've heard apparently the Mexican Grand Prix is a really, really fun event, which I mean, it
Yeah.
looks like it from TV. I've never gone, but it looks, especially
Yeah.
you got like the stadium seating when everyone kind of goes through and stuff. Looks super cool.
Have a solid, 3-4 margaritas and just hang out. That sounds
When in
amazing.
Mexico,
When in Mexico.
I'm just saying. Mike, I gotta say, you're gonna roast me for this. After all this, the stuff I've talked about Monaco, my favorite thing was just the fact that we actually had a remotely decent race. Entirely because if any of the things that happened today would happen on any other track, I think it would have been a legendary race instead of Monaco just being kind of like an interesting one. But it took the most ridiculous things to happen for this race to be exciting. So I'm actually going to give my personal favorite thing of the race to the Monaco GP.
There you go. So I know what you're saying though, because like all these wild things that happened today reminds me of Monza from 2020 when Pierre won, or when I don't remember which race it was when Esteban Ocon won. Like that's the kind of thing that probably would have happened today, given all that rain.
Yep.
That like on a regular start, something bananas would have happened. Max would have put the car right into the back of Carlos. Like that's probably the kind of thing we would have seen going into a regular turn one with the conditions being so poor. So I will agree with you that like different race, this probably would have been God tier. But with what we had today, it made it a very interesting race, as any race could have been like under regular conditions. So I'm not going to roast you for that. I will say that I completely agree with Sarah. My favorite thing in this race was like those last 5 minutes, because it was like anything can happen here. And what ended up happening, I was very happy with, except I wanted to see Charles. I was thinking about it, so let's see what you two think. Charles came in fourth. For him, is fourth better than being third and being on the podium when he expected to have won? What's worse?
Because he wouldn't have to show face, basically.
He can just hide.
Yeah. I think all of it's bad.
all bad.
Seeing how happy
it's
he
all bad.
was yesterday after qualifying, he was just so excited. Everyone was so excited for him. It's almost like the same energy that you have for Daniel Ricciardo, because like I think everyone wants these things for them. They want success for these drivers, and then for some reason it just seems like they're cursed.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's his home race. I mean, you see how not only does he have the fan support, he's just unbelievably fast at Monaco, right? I mean, it's one thing for him to get pole this year and absolutely destroy everyone. But remember, last year he got pole in a Ferrari that was terrible, right? Like Monaco is a track, if I can give any props whatsoever, it is a track that completely rewards confidence and a quick, pointy car. Something that you need, not only the car, but you need the driver is so important here. And so, yeah, it was great to see that sort of like all four cars in like a couple seconds at the end. I may or may not have started making the thumbnail for this episode immediately. I was like, well, clearly nothing's going to happen here. I didn't have maybe the hope, but it was at least it gave a little bit of a spark toward the end of the race. And it was really cool to see just like all four cars just like that close, like going through like the hairpin and everything, the tunnel. But yeah.
Sarah?
Random note.
Oh, go ahead.
That was a surprise, jumping into the season, is how much I love the green that Aston Martin chose.
So good.
I just, I wish they were better, but like it looks so good. Like everyone in the uniforms, in the car, aesthetically, I'm like, that green is the coolest thing I've seen on the track. Yeah,
It is called British Racing Green. That's the green. It's like a
I
traditional
love it.
color that a few different teams have used in
Okay.
Britain over the years. So it's
Yeah.
beautiful, and because they went the
looks great.
metallic and that bit of lime that goes through it. Oh, when this was during the one of my favorite things is when they show off the liveries, like the designs of the cars. And this year was extra exciting because they all look different too. And basically every day for like a 2-week period, you'll get a different team show off their liveries. And that was just, me and Austin were having a great time, sending pictures backwards and forwards. It's like, this one's trash. This one's
They all look-
amazing.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's fun. It's fun to talk about something when you feel like you're most passionate about it, you know?
Yeah.
In the very beginning.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot
We're
of fun.
not jaded yet. Where can people find
Exactly.
you online?
Yeah, you can just Google me, Sarah Peachy. My main thing is YouTube, and then Twitter is my number 2. So racing and all of my random interests lives on my Twitter feed at Sarah Dici.
My main thing is YouTube and then Twitter. It's just like, make it work, you know? So I think we're not going to be around for the Baku race. I'm traveling, and Austin doesn't want to wake up.
It's 4 a.m.
Neither of us want to wake up 4 a.m. And I'm
All right,
traveling.
guys, so I'll take over the podcast.
Yeah, it's all in Sarah's
You
hands
don't
now.
even need to ask. Yep, I'll take it over.
For you. I got it. So
I got
we'll
it,
be back
guys.
next for Montreal, which is on the 19th of July, I think. I have no doubt we'll touch on the goings on in Baku on that episode for the Montreal episode. But until then, you can find us online. We're at Backmarkers Live. I'm at Myke. Austin is at Austin.Duncan. Again, thank you so much to Sarah for joining us in this episode. We're back next time. Until then, say goodbye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
All right.
And don't actually leave because we're doing the post show now.
Yeah, we're still live, but we can stop our audio recordings.
Oh, stop the
save
audio, okay.
those. So
We always like to do a little.
we just usually
after
hang out
show.
with the best people who come and join us live
Yeah,
for a little bit.
This is where the shit talking starts.
Yeah.
exactly. This is where I tell you that Daniel Ricciardo's lame. I don't know.
Poor
If I come up
Daniel.
with something.
Poor
No,
Daniel.
I tell Myke the Mercedes is overrated. There we go. That's what I need.
Yeah, man, you can't be a fan of the team that's had like a 8-year reign.
Exactly.
No, but you see, this is
That's
it.
not fun.
I can because now they're terrible, and I'm still a fan, right? So like everyone's like, "Oh, you only like them because they win." No, I like them because, well, I love Lewis Hamilton. He's my favorite, and I love George Russell. They're 2 British drivers. Come on, I mean, what do people expect from me? You know what I mean? People get mad at
by
me
that
because
logic-
I'm British and like British drivers, and it's only because
no,
there are no
Mike.
American drivers. If there was an American
By that
driver,
logic,
everyone would
I'm
be
a Haas
losing their
fan.
minds for that guy. You know. But you can't like Haas because Haas suck, and it's not like because I don't like I love. It's not like Mercedes are not a British team technically,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
The German, right?
It's, yeah.
they German
I mean,
or-
to be fair, basically.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
Well, so it's kind of weird. So basically, every team, with a couple of exceptions, are based in the UK. So Ferrari is based in Italy. Haas is mostly based in Italy, and AlphaTauri is mostly based in Italy. And I think Alpine they're still primarily. I think their engines in France and everything else is in the UK. So basically,
but they all
almost
have
every
a home,
team
right?
is
So like
British.
Mercedes play the German national anthem when
Yep.
they win. I would just wanted to confirm because people were shouting out. I obviously as well love Lando. They're my 3 favorite drivers. Lewis, Lando,
Wait.
George.
Yeah, you can't forget Albon. I mean, he's British. I know technically
I
he
love
has
Alex
he
Albon.
races under a Thai
Yeah,
flag, but
we accept him when whether he wants it or not. I mean, I love Alex, but Alex is not in the same league.
If he wants to perform.
Yeah, I love Alex Albon.
Oh.
I think he's a great driver, but like I don't like them just because they're British. I like them because they're British and really good. You know, it's like
also Charles has a great point. Yeah, Alpha is based, or Sauber, I guess, is based in Switzerland. So yeah, you are correct on that, which I know is one of they're the only ones who are really outside the main Italy and the UK. Which I know that's actually a whole thing for just attracting talent, because a lot of people, like if you're into Formula One and you want to be like a mechanic or whatever, generally speaking, you need to live in the UK, and a lot of people don't want to have to move to like Italy or Switzerland or whatever, which I know kind of makes each team have a little bit of a different flavor. Jake actually asked a great question I don't know the answer to. Why did Alex drop out of the race?
Do not
I
know.
definitely missed that.
do not know.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know, man.
They were just wheeling him in. Like they just went to him in the pit and they just wheeled him in. So it must have been a mechanical failure. He didn't have an accident of any kind. That seemed. He did have that. Something happened to his wheel, right? Like he had a puncture, like his wheel was coming off. Maybe that did some damage to the car.
Oh,
but that happened quite a while beforehand. But it's possible that it had some damage that didn't get recovered.
Yeah, so. I don't know. Everyone's just saying that we should all be fired and Sarah should just take over.
I mean,
I agree. Actually, I think it makes sense.
It's okay, guys. I'll take it over.
That's fine. Thank you. Great, we've got weekends free.
It's okay. Yeah.
I'll wake up at 8:00 in the morning again and be feeling great. I
didn't think about the West Coast, man, because I thought I had it rough waking up at like 7:30, but oof. West Coasters, brutal.
Yeah. So when I was texting Mike about this. So when we got sponsored by the Racing Line, I downloaded it. I'm like, oh, it's pretty cool. And I started loading. I was like, oh, this time's not right. It says Baku's 4 a.m. I was like, oh wait, oh no, this is actually correct. Oh no.
Yeah, but
Charles is saying it's suspension damage for Alex.
Okay.
That makes sense,
yeah, I mean, especially if he busted the wheel, right?
Yeah,
that's probably what caused it. Because it was on for 3 wheels at one point.
Yeah, unless you're Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone, you can't do that.
Such a good race. Oh my God. When was that? 2020? 2019? No, 2020, right?
2020. Yeah, 2020.
There was,
yeah.
Sarah, there was this one race. It was one of the first races of the season because everything got messed up through COVID. And in the last 3 laps, about half, it felt like half or a quarter or the half of the drivers, their wheels just started exploding. They were getting punctures. Some were falling, the tires were flying off. It was crazy. And it was just, it was their first time on a tire compounds. It was really hot. And Pirelli changed the makeup of the tire a little bit as things progress. But it was this really weird, it was really weird. After the races were done, Pirelli were covering the tires up because they didn't want people to see them. It was really strange because they were failing and ripping in half. It was very weird. But that was a great race.
It led to one of the most amazing moments.
He finished on 3 wheels. It was incredible.
Oh my God.
And won the race on 3 wheels.
Won the race on 3 wheels because he's the best of all time. Go.
Yeah, I'd be curious to, because I'm assuming that you guys have watched all seasons of Drive to Survive at this point. Okay. Yeah. So obviously when you start talking about that on the interwebs, people are very passionate about what narratives are false, what narratives are exaggerated, etc. And it seems like everyone hated the last season. And I thought that last season, and again, I still watch the YouTube videos. I get the broader context. I'm watching the races, so I understand that, all the drivers don't hate everyone. But I thought that last season was great.
Yeah, so,
they did have weird overlapping storylines. It felt like there was a narrative change in how they told it. But I thought there were so many kind of crazy things like that.
I think
that
the thing
made
was
it fantastic.
I loved the show. I loved the season for the stories they decided to tell, and I liked the drama of it. And I could tell that the Ricardo Lando thing was that was probably the worst. They manufactured an issue that didn't really seem to exist.
Because I watched the McLaren YouTube channel and they're so chill with each other.
And they seem like they're a great pairing. I don't think Lando could have a bad relationship with someone. He seems like he's just. Oh yeah.
You know what, man? I feel like any of these guys, if they got into if they're fighting for a championship.
Oh yeah, but that's a different.
Any of these guys could get.
That's a different situation, right? If they're 1 and 2 in the championship and they start smashing into each other, that's a whole. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. Yep. The main problem that I had with the show, and I think it's the one that most people have, is last season was incredibly dramatic. Just the season itself, there were better stories to tell than the ones they chose.
So I didn't have that context.
Yeah, and so if you watch the season, I mean, it was out and out. Everyone, no matter how long you've been watching it, was saying this is probably the greatest season of the sport that there has ever been, because you had Lewis and Max was just unbelievable the whole time.
Insane.
But the whole way back, there were wild things happening. It really was an incredible season, and they seemed to they picked a few things and really went at them. Like some of the stories that they told were really interesting, but the fact that they basically created a drama for an entire episode and a half was like, why did you do this when there's all these other stories? And I don't know if you're following it, but like Checo got really upset because Max pulled out for the season. He wasn't in it. They did an interesting thing that didn't seem like that. You kind of had to know that because they were playing interview clips of Max from other interviews.
Yeah.
But
I saw that on Twitter that he
didn't want to do it
because of the Daniel Ricciardo stuff.
And then Checo,
because up until recently, I still thought that Daniel Ricciardo and Max like hated each other. And then I was seeing all these videos on YouTube of them just like chilling, you know?
It actually kind of really like, it doesn't really seem like anyone hates Max. Honestly, like
well, I was surprised that Lewis Hamilton was still so chill with Max after, I don't know, because like the whole thing last season seemed way too intense for Lewis Hamilton to just be like, congrats. So I mean, that speaks to Lewis Hamilton being a class act.
This is part of what I like. The way that final race went down, the fact that he could come and like just congratulate him when Lewis was.
But still, is that going to make Max just get away with everything though? I don't know.
Well, they changed.
Don't be mad.
They've changed some rules.
I know
they've changed some rules based on some of the things that were happening last season.
Yeah.
And there's like a new rule that is called like the Verstappen rule, which is at race restarts after safety cars, Max would always pull up beside the other car, which you should not be able to do. So they like changed the rule, and it's kind of colloquially known as the Verstappen rule. Yeah, it's like
that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, like you will see it now, like. As you go into the next season of Drive to Survive, you'll come at it with that knowledge of like, all right, I have a bit more information here, which I wanted, but there's some like I always have like, oh, here's the stories I hope they tell, and they'll hit like 2 out of the like 5 that I want to see more about. But what I really liked about the last one is like the amount that they focus on George and how it got to him getting his seat, because that was very mysterious at the time. It's like, what is happening with George? What's happening with Valtteri? And some of the behind the scenes they showed there, I loved it. It was really interesting.
Yeah. I'm just not as excited by Drive to Survive anymore. I feel like it was great to kind of like rekindle my love of the sport, and I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like once you are deep,
it's like a gateway.
It is a great gateway.
And
it's
then,
a perfect gateway. Yeah. And you don't need it
the
as
hard
much.
stuff. You don't go back.
Yeah, what's your mainline in? Like your entire weekends for 23 weeks of the year. Like once you started watching qualifying, you don't need Drive to Survive anymore. You're so in. I didn't watch qualifying for my first season, and now I can watch as much as I can of the entire weekends because it's just I just want more.
I will
and more.
say, I need to find a better. I think because I just signed up to like the Fubo TV just because it gets all sports, but I really only care about F1. So I need to just sign up for F1 streaming, because do they have like all the interviews pre and post? Because that's what you don't get from ESPN.
So I know it's different. So Mike, because you can't get any of that.
I can't get any of it. Right? It's all locked into Sky for us.
Yeah. So basically based on your country. So Sarah, I believe
I can just use a VPN then?
No. So it's actually the other way around. Because he's in the UK, he can't get like F1 TV is really watered down for him. Us in the US actually have the full F1 TV. I actually don't subscribe to it. I actually watch via YouTube TV. Same thing I watch just on ESPN. I believe that F1 TV, if you get the pro subscription, you get pretty much everything. Okay. They have like a bunch of extra bonus videos. You also have the ability to change your camera feed. So you can actually have like, if you just want to watch the whole race from Daniel's point of view or something, you can just watch that or something. But that cool. has, I think, more of that full package. But also, it doesn't play at 720p.
Chad in the chat is saying Ferrari are protesting Max's finish due to the crossing out of the pit exit line.
What?
Did you see it? Like it was actually quite clear to me. He was over the line on his pit exit.
All right. Ferrari has lodged a protest against Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen for touching the pit exit line after a Monaco Grand Prix pit stop, according to Christian Horner. Ooh.
Spice.
So apparently race control said it was noted that he had touched the pit lane.
But didn't do anything.
But yeah. Apparently, during the post-race media briefing, Christian Horner was informed that Ferrari were protesting it.
Sometimes the race results will take like a day to shake out, and they change things around afterwards. This could be one of those.
Do we need a different thumbnail for this video now?
Just a big yellow line.
Exposed. The truth unveiled.
Get to work.
Max banned for life from a Formula One. That sounds about right. Interesting. That seems like I feel like it's one thing if you try to protest during the race. Once the race is over, I don't know. That to me is always a little bit of a line of like when people who are like trying to like reverse the championship last year, like if you either sort it out on the race on the track or at least start the investigation. If there was nothing that was going on and they're trying to protest after the fact, I don't know.
I mostly agree
weird,
with
especially
you.
something so minor.
That final race was disastrous, but yeah, there is kind of like a window.
Yeah.
And if you can't sort it out, it's like it carries on forever. Some of the stuff can get really tedious.
Yeah. So supposedly they would get 5-second penalties, which would drop both Max and Checo down to P3, P4, I think, because they're all super tight at the end. Ooh, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Well, that's what you get, friends, here on YouTube for watching the post-race show. You get those live spicy updates.
All right, should we call it there? So we get working on this.
I think we should.
Sarah, I think this was awesome. Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. All right, we'll kill the stream now. We'll be back in a few weeks' time.